Shiloh Baptist Church. That's a brick church building on the right dates back to 1890. This is just one of so many of the 100, even 200-year-old historic buildings that you see still in use all over Fredericksburg today. I think one thing that kind of sets us apart from some of those other historic areas is the fact that the historic buildings in Fredericksburg are all original buildings. These are not reproductions of houses like some of the ones in Williamsburg. Look at a place like the Center for the Creative Arts, building on the right there. It's been in that spot for more than 200 years. It was built in 1785. At that time, this is the home of a silversmith named James Brown. Look back. See, the house is built on a big sandstone rock foundation. That's an important part of the house built this close to this river because of the flooding that we get sometimes. I've seen the river in this part of Sophia Street twice in about the last 30 years now. This is before my time, but in 1942, again after Hurricane Agnes, in 1972, the Rappahannock flooded more than 40 feet here. That's twice in the last 100 years that there have been boats on Caroline Street a block to the left. The Silversmith's house, some of these buildings on Sophia Street were halfway underwater in the big floods of 1942 and 72. See how the road goes up sharply in front of us, back down again on the outside of traffic light. That's also because of flooding. They've been trying to build bridges across the river here since 1807. Every time a new bridge was built, the floodwaters always washed it out. Each new bridge has had to be built a little higher than the one that replaced you. Over the years, they've been bringing in so much fill dirt to make the streets meet the height of each new bridge. They bury about half of that stone warehouse on the right. That door is in the third floor of what's really a 4-story building.
Wow.
Walk out of the bridge, look down on the other side. You'll see how tall the stone warehouse was when it was built in 1830. I'll get to your right here, so between the buildings across the river in the treetops on Stafford Heights, you'll see a big brick mansion in the trees there called Chatham. Chatham was built in 1768. It was the home of a friend of George Washington's named William Fitzhugh.
This one right here.
It might be the only home in this country. It had been visited by both Presidents George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. But we still have some leaves on the trees this time of year. It makes it a little harder to see Chatham from this side of the river at this time of year with foliage, but you get a great view of it. Take a short drive or just walk over the bridge. Go visit Chatham. The house is maintained by our National Park Service.
Oh, yeah.
I bring that camera with you and you go over there and you stand in front of Chatham today and you look across the river at Fredericksburg skyline. You'll see the same courthouse spire, the same church steeples. It's almost the same skyline today the Union soldiers saw when they stood there looking at Fredericksburg before the Civil War battle here in 1862. It was late November of 1862 when the biggest, certainly the best equipped army that this side of the world had ever seen began to arise across the river in that ridge, Stafford Heights. The United States Army of the Potomac was huge. By 19th century standards, about 118,000 men. I try to put that into perspective. 118,000 is about the population of all Stafford County over there today. Stafford has 5 high schools, 3 Walmarts.
These are just fun.
Yeah.
In command of this huge force across the river is Major General Ambrose Burnside. Burnside's plan is to cross the Rappahannock. He wants to occupy Fredericksburg, use this as a supply base to attack the Confederate capital 60 miles to the south at Richmond. And Richmond is on this side of the river. U.S. supplies come from Washington 60 miles to the north. That's on the other side. Burnside feels that this is the best place to cross, and it is, even though the river is deeper in 1862. Burnside knows Confederates have burned the bridges that lead into the city, but the general has a plan for that. Sort of these portable floating pontoon bridges to meet the army from Washington. For some reason, this equipment arrives 10 days late. 2 weeks go by, Union troops have to wait around over there in the cold and the rain. As they watch the river rise, they also watch 78,000 Confederates under the command of Robert E. Lee on the high ground that's west of the city, on a ridge called Maurice. That's to take it there and there. 1,500 Mississippian sharpshooters are positioned in the warehouses down on this riverbank at 2 o'clock in the morning, December 11th. These guys start to hear some activity on the other side. They can't see the heavy fog at first that morning, but they can hear wagons rolling down the hill and shouting and splashing going on to cross the river. They know that the Union engineers are floating out the first sections of that bridge and the crossing is underway. The bridge is supposed to be finished by sunrise, But they're only about halfway out and the sun comes in. So the fog starts to lift. The unarmed men working on the end of the bridge has become sitting ducks in the middle of the river under heavy sniper fire from the Mississippians in these warehouses. And that's a Burnside shells the town. 150 guns open up in the riverbank. In about 2 hours, they destroy every warehouse but that stone warehouse that we just passed. 2 in the afternoon, a lot of buildings in this north end of the city are on fire. But no matter how many shells they throw at the Confederates, they can't clear out the snipers. And whenever they come back out to try to work on the bridge, they come under fire now for buildings along Sophia Street. U.S. officers realize they're not going to get the bridge built this way, so they call for volunteers to jump into the pontoon boats and just paddle across. From 35 men, 2 boats managed to land at the bottom of the steep riverbank down the rank. They scrambled up the hill, hold off the snipers until reinforcements had paddled over. What follows is one of the only instances of house-to-house city street fighting that occurred during the entire Civil War. Street fighting just rages in the downside. So you take the next one and the one after that until after dark. Finally, around nightfall, the Mississippians get the order to withdraw. They join the main body of the Confederate Army behind the city on Marie's Heights, leaves downtown here in Union hands. For the next 2 days, U.S. engineers build 5 more bridges downstream, while many of the rest of those troops and supplies come across unopposed over the next 2 days. But they still have to deal with 78,000 Confederates just a mile away on Marie's Heights. What do you think about that window?
Good.
Is it warm? Is it all right?
We're good.
We're
Yep.
good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Spiders. Yep. This house is so dope right here. This one. Right on the water.
Sorry, I thought I saw a bald eagle over there. My eyes playing tricks on me. It's just leaves. We do have 500 bald eagles on the Rappahannock right now, and there's a nesting pair of bald eagles that live here all year round.
It's
I don't know, unusual to see one of both of them out there. They like that spot there too. You think that 200,000 enemy soldiers standing here living one another across a couple of 100 feet of river for 3 weeks, you might think they're not trying to shoot each other back there. Before the crossing got underway, there was a kind of informal truce between the privates on both sides here. Most of them would just line up on the riverbanks every day, stand there and shout insults across at each other. They'd even trade back and forth across the river. Confederates are almost always happy to trade their Southern tobacco for the Union soldiers' imported coffee beans. And they told settlers, put packages of mostly coffee and tobacco, but all kinds of things went across the river and traded as well before the killing started here in 1862. Irish immigrants fought on both sides with about equal numbers throughout the Civil War. Here at Fredericksburg, there's stories of Irish troops swimming across that cold river to spend some time with their former countrymen in those days that led up to the fighting here.
There's the university. Thank you. Part of it.
We're connected at full foliage yet, so on the left is it might be the oldest home in the city. Parts of this White House that date back to the early 1740s. It's a private home today. The owner of this house gets a Christmas card and a birthday card from the gas company every year. The time of the American Revolution is the time of a patriot named Charles Dick. Charles Dick and his business partner, a man named Field and Lewis, started a business manufacturing muskets for the Continental Army. From 1775 until the Revolution ended 8 years later, these men used their own money to manufacture and repair muskets. They even paid to have them shipped to Virginia as volunteers in the field. Remember, these guys, so they were working for a government that didn't levy taxes very well. They didn't have much credit to borrow from foreign banks to pay for war and for defense industries. After 8 years of revolution, Congress had no money in the treasury and never paid it back. Charles Dick lost his house to death. His partner, Fielding Lewis, didn't live to have to see his family sell Kenmore plantation, trying to pay back his war debts. And both of these men, these were the wealthiest men in the city in 1775. They both gave nearly everything that they had to this country. This left corner is the Fredericksburg Baptist Church. Look out, that's one of the steeples that you can see from across the river 161 years ago. This building predates the Civil War by almost 10 years, built in 1854. You think the architect of that church building was James Renwick. James Renwick was one of the most important American architects of the 19th century. I'll show you one of Renwick's buildings right up the street here in just a minute. First, on this right corner is Hyperion Espresso. And in here today, that's not only the best cup of coffee in Fredericksburg, that's the best coffee in the world in here. They say they don't know where George Washington slept here, but he woke up at Hyperion. The big sandstone and brick building left was our city hall. 1816 until 1982. At that time, this was the oldest continuously used city hall building.
There's a museum.
The Fredericksburg Museum.
Have you ever been in it?
St. George's Church on the left is not quite the oldest church building. The congregation's been here almost as long as the city has been. The Church of England was built on this corner in 1734. They built 3 churches on this site. The days when George Washington was a member of the congregation at St. George's. This building dates back to 1849. Beautiful churches, red doors are usually unlocked. You can go look around if you want to. 3 of the stained glass windows in St. George's come from Tiffany's in New York City. Buried in some cemetery are some relatives of people you know. The father of Arthur Washington was Colonel John Dandridge. He's buried there. So is the brother of the sea captain, John Salter. The unusual stucco building on the left of the green copper roof is not a church. This is the old courthouse, built in 1852. The courthouse is also designed by James Renwick, remember the architect who did the Baptist Church 2 blocks behind us on Princess Anne Street. James Renwick is probably best known as the architect of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. I've always liked that red Smithsonian castle on the wall in Washington. Renwick building, he did his work in brick and stone. James Renwick must have turned over his grave in 1916 when they stuccoed the courthouse. It was a sandstone and brick building. It had a slate roof designed and built in the 1850s. The courthouse is damaged in a fire around the turn of the century. It's probably when it was stuccoed. I'm going to go on a limb here and guess that's where they built the firehouse right next door in 1905.
Firehouse.
The old courthouse building is not in use anymore since ever since the new courthouse was built on the left. Newer courthouse, that's in there anymore.
Jeez.
So here's the new courthouse. It opened about 10 years ago in 2014. We're right out of the south end, so now I'll show you a couple of Fredericksburg's early suburbs. By the mid-1700s, the city would have extended south only about to receive a traffic light and the railroad bridge in front of us. In 1752, there was an attorney named Roger Dixon who decided to change careers and go into real estate. He bought 350 acres in the south end of the city, surveyed at least 40 riverfront lots. He spent the rest of his life savings in a beautiful model home that's still standing on Caroline Street. I'll show you that in just a few minutes. Roger Dixon must have figured he'd get rich selling real estate to the other wealthy professionals and businessmen there, but I guess none of them were buying in 1752. Roger Dixon couldn't sell any of the lots. Deeply in debt when he died, The model home sat empty for 20 years before a man named Dr. Mortimer bought it. But Dr. Mortimer came along at a much better time in the real estate markets. He'd been more successful selling lots in the east section after the revolution in the late 1700s. I'm going to show you some of my favorite of the city's 18th century houses. See them a block to the left on Caroline Street in just a minute. First, right on Princess Anne Street. The houses on this end of Princess Anne Street were built later. These are built in the 1800s. Wealthy people were pretty well established on Caroline Street at that time. These were young middle class, the working class people in the 19th century. You can tell that by looking at the size, especially at the width of these houses. This green one on the left is a good example. This is built in 1882. You see how this, and all the houses on this part of the street, that's how narrow at today's standards. But there's a reason for that. Here in 19th century Fredericksburg, your property taxes are only assessed on the width of the front yard. Up to 1920, those taxes are based on foot frontage, and that was it. So it didn't really matter how big the house was, even how much land you had to write back. If you worked for your living, but they higher property taxes. One way around them in those days was to build or buy your house on a little 20 to 24 foot lot. That's right, some of these homes are only 15 feet long. Everybody loves this green cottage on the left. It's called the 1770 house. So look back as you go by and see it's been added on to since 1770. This part of the house is here at that time. It wasn't a home in those days. When this was built, it was the carriage house for one of the older homes and block to the left on Caroline Street. You can see what a great job they've done restoring these houses over the years. I'll tell you though, I can remember this is nowhere near the nice, unique neighborhood it is today. They tell me in the 1970s, the 70s, you could have had any of these houses for less than $20,000.
Wow.
Some of these we got for $600,000. Make this left turn at the lower Caroline Street, get a whole other tax bracket down here. This end of Caroline Street, you'll see some of the city's oldest, best preserved